Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, wherever you are, and welcome to our next CanPrep webinar, Using LinkedIn to Build Your Canadian Professional Network. I would like to wish a happy International Women's Day to all the women out there. And today our webinar is going to talk about LinkedIn. So I'm your webinar facilitator. My name is Irene Maxman. I'm the Director of Newcomer Services at JVS Toronto. My background is in education and HR. I have a master's degree in human resource management, many years of experience in adult education, ESL training and recruitment. I oversee the Newcomer Employment Services at the JVS Toronto North location. This is where our CanPrep program is. And this includes programs such as job search workshop, enhanced language training, and mentoring for internationally trained professionals in a variety of occupational fields. I'm actively involved in different networks, consortium of agencies serving internationally trained persons, CASA, local immigration partnerships, and other community-wide initiatives. It is my pleasure to introduce our speakers, our panelists for today. Perry Monaco is the Manager of Customer Success at LinkedIn Talent Solutions. Perry Monaco has focused more than the past decade of his career in recruitment, touching all facets of talent acquisition, agency recruiting, corporate talent acquisition, and professional services. He is currently head of customer success for LinkedIn, where he is responsible for helping talent acquisition leaders in the world's largest, most complex companies leverage the confluence of technology, marketing, and recruitment to connect people with opportunities around the world at massive scale. Perry was one of the first 4.1 million members of LinkedIn and sits in the top 10 of most engaged employee profiles on the global network. Perry was the first consultant in Canada for LinkedIn and currently resides in Toronto. Welcome, Perry.
Thank you very much.
Our next panelist it is my pleasure to introduce Karen Lewis. Karen Lewis is our Employment Communications and Marketing Specialist at JVS Toronto. Karen presently balances the roles of employment counselor, consultant, and social media specialist here at JVS Toronto. Over her 20 years of professional experience, she has specialized in working with clients facing severe barriers such as mental health, disability, and abuse. In recent years, Karen developed special knowledge in utilizing social media tools for employment, in which she trains clients, colleagues, and community partners. And actually, the workshops that Karen delivers are one of our most popular, most featured workshops at JVS. A recognized specialist in her field, she manages and writes for the JVS Toronto blog. Many of you might be familiar with it already. A popular source of career, job search, and labor market information with worldwide relationship, and she has been featured on CTV National News as an employment specialist. Welcome, Karen.
Glad to be here.
Okay, over to you, Perry.
All right. Welcome. Thank you for having me. I think this is a really great opportunity for us to be able to talk about some of the things that you can realistically do on a platform such as ours. Certainly, LinkedIn being the largest professional network in the world is a great opportunity for you to be able to leverage that, identify some new opportunities for you to build some of the relationships that you need to build to be able to find employment in a new country, while also at the same time being able to leverage some of your previous relationships and experiences to help you gain some of that additional experience. So ultimately, what we want to be able to do for you on LinkedIn is connect you to opportunity. There's a lot of different things that you can do on LinkedIn. There's a lot of different reasons why people come to LinkedIn or come to social media in general. What I challenge you to think about is, what is the opportunity that you want to be connected to? And that really is a conversation that you need to have with yourself and with your family and the people who are around you. And that's a conversation you have off of LinkedIn. That's something that you should really understand the answer to before you even start to do some of the things that I'm going to talk to you about today. This is going to be a really tactical type of conversation over the course of the next 20 minutes or so. I will admit that the most important slide will be the very last slide. There will be a list of links and different resources that you can use to be able to get more out of what it is that I'm talking about today. But none of that is really going to be helpful unless you understand what the opportunity is that you want to connect yourself with.
I would just like to remind everyone that our webinar today is recorded and you will be able to access it on the CanPrep blog, or just request from your counselor to send the link to the webinar to you after we finish. So don't worry if you didn't have enough time to record everything, you will have the recorded webinar available.
Excellent. And I know that I speak fast. I'm going to try not to speak as fast, so I apologize in advance for that. But understanding what opportunity it is that you want to connect with is really, really important. I'm going to assume that the majority of the people who are listening to this, the opportunity that they want to connect with is a job in Canada. So that will make that'll be my theme for the next little bit of my presentation. But certainly there may be other things that you want to get connected with that you can still apply some of these things that I'm going to talk about. So let's move ahead and look at 3 different things that LinkedIn hopes to help its members achieve. One is we want to make sure that you're connecting in the right way. We want to make sure that you're connecting to the people, to the things, to the companies, to the different pieces of information that are on LinkedIn in a way that's going to help you move forward in your career. We also want to make sure that you're staying informed. Obviously, coming to a new country, coming to or exploring a new industry, it's really important for you to be able to understand your surroundings. And so there's an opportunity, a huge opportunity on LinkedIn to be able to consume the content that is there and stay informed. Understand the Canadian marketplace and understand what professionals in your field are talking about in their industry so that you can make sure that you're using not only the same language, and I don't mean English, I mean the same sort of language within that industry, because we all have different buzzwords and terms that we like to use, so it's important to be able to stay up on top of that stuff. And then ultimately, we want to make sure that you get hired. LinkedIn is certainly a place where professionals come to perform that activity, and companies come here to find the people that they need to hire. So we want to ultimately make sure that you're connecting with the right people so that you can also stay informed on the industry that you've chosen to be in, and that will result in you getting hired. So let's talk about how it is first that you can connect with your professional world. We want to build a great profile. A lot of people, one of the questions I get a lot is, should I buy a premium membership? I want to say right now that this is not a sales pitch. There is no point in buying anything on LinkedIn or any other social media site or any other type of internet product unless you take advantage of everything that's available on the free site. My belief is that someone who is looking for a new opportunity on LinkedIn can do so without having to pay us anything. I know that may sound funny working for the company, but I don't need you to buy a membership to be successful. What I do need you to do, though, is to present the right first impression, the right profile, the right language on your profile, so that when people do find you, they are reading and consuming the right information about you so that they get excited about making that introduction to you and their company. So let's talk about some of the things that makes a great profile. Firstly, we want to make sure that you have a professional photo. It is really important to make sure that your profile includes a photo. If your profile does not have a photo, it is viewed as though you have something to hide. You want to imagine that when somebody is engaging with you in real life, they are going to be engaging with you and in a visual way, as well as a way to understand who you are and what you bring to the table. Part of that real life example of meeting someone is actually looking in their face and seeing who they are, understanding what type of energy they're giving off. And the same activity happens in a virtual space as well. It's really important to have that professional photo, and you can see here that your profile is going to have 21 times more views with a profile photo than without. And of course that's important because we want our profile to be viewed. As job seekers, we want employers, we want recruiters, we want people in our industry to be looking at our profile. So let's take advantage of that and make sure that we have a profile photo. You also want to make sure that you are creating a attention-grabbing headline. Your headline is the area that is just below your name on your profile. That is the area where you're going to be able to tell me what it is that you're trying to achieve on LinkedIn. What is it that you would say to somebody when you first meet with them? Forget about whether or not it's a job interview or if it's something professional in nature. What is the first thing that you would say about yourself or the value proposition that you would offer to somebody when you meet them in a social situation. That's what you really want your headline to be. You want to be able to explain what it is that you are there to achieve. And so I don't think it's a problem to suggest that you are seeking new opportunities in industry X. It's totally fine in my mind to be very open, very honest, and very direct in terms of what it is that you are trying to achieve. But at the same time, you also want to separate yourself from all of the other people who are looking for new opportunities by demonstrating that you're really passionate about your job, passionate about your industry. You're passionate about the value that you can bring, and you do bring a lot of value to the table. There's a real opportunity here to make sure that people understand that you really love what you do. Too often, there are people in roles today that just do not like their jobs. And so as a hiring manager, it's extremely valuable to have someone on your team that actually really wants to come into work every single day because they're passionate about what they do. So there's a couple of examples that you're going to be able to leverage, borrow, however it is that you want to describe, using this as a framework for your own headline. The summary statement is also very important. This is an area that may be the hardest on the profile to come up with because it's also the area that you need to be able to write from scratch. It really is, there's some help that we will offer you in terms of keywords here, but this is really where you want to be able to tell the story of yourself. This is also very different from the resume. The resume is something that generally is a list of bullet points on 1 or 2 pages that sort of just highlights some of the things that you want me to know about the career accomplishments or what you did or what you didn't do in your previous roles. The summary statement gives you the opportunity to tell the story of who you are. It allows you to tie some of the things that you maybe have done in the past that are not necessarily directly related to what you want to do here, but allows you to be able to tell that story of how those skills are transferable. A big thing to remember about your summary statement is that you want it to be in very plain language. You want it to be written in the first person, so I did this, I accomplished this, I am passionate about this. And you also want to remember that the majority of the people right now who are visiting LinkedIn are doing so on their phone. So if your summary statement is a very long, paragraph-heavy type of text type of format, it's not going to come across very well on someone's phone when they're looking at your profile. So you want to be cautious of that. The recommendation is 40 words or more. My suggestion would be to write something in consultation with somebody who can help you put together what that biography would look like, and then actually get someone else to look at your profile on their phone. So you can actually imagine that you're that hiring manager picking up the phone, looking at your profile for the first time, and trying to imagine, am I really going to want to continue to swipe page after page after page because you've written a very long text-based summary. So keep that in mind. Imagine, put yourself in the hiring manager's shoes.
And one of the ideas would be relayed back to your employment counselor at CAMPREP and have them read your summary statement when in doubt.
Perfect example of how you can leverage somebody who's in the industry that can help you. The next step would be to make sure that you have multimedia uploaded to your profile. So there's an opportunity either using our sister company's SlideShare or uploading them directly to LinkedIn. There's an opportunity for you to upload videos or upload different PowerPoint presentations or things that may have been in your portfolio if you're in a creative field and you've been able to create some marketing materials or advertisements or whatever the case may be, or you are a writer and you want to upload some of your material. This is something that allows you to be able to leverage the profile to be able to showcase some of these things a lot better than you may otherwise know. So here's a couple of examples of being able to do that. So adding examples of your work in photos, presentations, etc. You also want to make sure that you're adding skills on your profile. So skills are something that you can put on your profile to say that you have a particular skill set, you have a list of the different specific skills that are related to your role, and it also allows you to be endorsed for those particular skills. So previous colleagues, managers, clients, customers can visit, when they visit your profile, they're actually prompted to say, do you have this particular skill? Are you good at this? And we know that the more skills you have on your profile, you have the ability to have up to 50 of them on your profile. The more of them that you have that are visible, the more likely that your profile is going to be viewed. And of course, that's really important. We want to make sure that our profile is viewed very often. This is an area that is really important for people who are in job-seeking mode, to include all of your volunteer experiences and causes. And certainly for somebody who may be new to the country, this is also an area where you may have more experience than work experience. And so it's really important for you to be able to highlight this. Community involvement is very important for many, many Canadian employers. We look for well-rounded individuals, not only people who are very smart or very talented in their particular profession, but somebody who also understands that we are part of a larger community, and the community is only good as the sum of the people who are in it. And so typically, even at LinkedIn, I will never hire anyone who doesn't have a strong connection to the community and does take the opportunity in their own time to volunteer for the different causes that mean something to them. At the end of the day, I don't necessarily think it matters what causes you're volunteering for. I know there's been some questions of if it's a religious or cultural type of volunteer experience, is that something that matters? Would that be sort of used against me, so to speak? That's not the case. I would say that any type of volunteer experience that you have would be really, really good. Move on to the next one. So let's stay informed. And how do we stay informed? I think it's important for us to know, we talked a little bit about the profile and the importance of the profile, which is great, but why is that important? Why is it that I would want my profile to be viewed? Well, let's take a look at some of the raw numbers. Let's talk about what your audience looks like first, and then we can talk a little bit about staying informed. There are almost 500 million members on LinkedIn right now worldwide. That is a significant number. We are the world's largest professional network. There are more people on LinkedIn professionally than there is anywhere else on any other network. And here in Canada, there's about 15 million members in Canada. So when you think about the types of people who are on LinkedIn, there are a significant number. When you look at the companies who are investing in hiring people from LinkedIn, every single Fortune 500 company in the United States is a customer of LinkedIn. And so you have a lot of people, and a lot of companies who are on LinkedIn that are going to be looking at your profile if you are sharing the right information. And then, of course, they are sharing information with you that allow you to stay informed. So let's quickly dive into that a little bit. There is an opportunity for you to leverage 4 different areas of LinkedIn. I won't go into great detail of them today, but there are ways in which you can investigate a number of these different places on LinkedIn to stay informed of the industry that is relevant to you. SlideShare, I already mentioned, is an opportunity for you to be able to not only leverage in terms of putting things on your own profile, but also gives you the opportunity to see what other people are sharing in terms of their presentations, their relevant industry information. Groups is something that is very common across a number of different social media platforms, so you're likely familiar with them. But groups allow you to be able to connect with people within the LinkedIn environment that have a very like-minded type of initiative when they are joining that group. So for instance, there's likely a number of newcomer groups on LinkedIn, excuse me. There's also a number of industry-specific groups, so groups that are specifically related to people who are in engineering, say, who can engage in conversation with one another. There's also an opportunity for you to leverage LinkedIn Today, which is an area where you can read news articles and content that has been shared by other people. And then there's also the opportunity for you to be able to follow and to consume the information of people who are quote-unquote influencers on LinkedIn. There's about 500 of these individuals, and these are generally very senior individuals, owners of companies, presidents, vice presidents, etc. People who have opinions about their industry and the work world, and well, some of them are famous, so you'll probably recognize their names, but they generally have something to contribute back to the LinkedIn network in terms of their thoughts and their opinions of different work-related articles and information and opinions. You too have the opportunity to be able to be part of this ongoing conversation. the area on the left, which is the updates that you can create, is very similar to a lot of the other different type of social media networks that you may know already or be part of. And this is where you have the opportunity to share links to articles that you think are important to your industry or things that people who you're connected to you think would be interested. Gives you the opportunity to be able to engage with other people's updates as well. For instance, I was just using the example of International Women's Day today before we got started, where I shared something on LinkedIn this morning about a woman who's been very influential in my career, someone who has helped me advance my career, who also happens to be a woman, and I wanted to celebrate her today on International Women's Day. Those types of things are something that our networks are very interested in hearing about. It's about having a conversation. Imagine your profile and your presence on LinkedIn not just like having an ad in a newspaper or a billboard on the side of the road. Think of your profile as something that is alive, that is dynamic, and something that you can use to be able to engage with other people. You also have on the right-hand side the opportunity to be able to publish more longer form content, which is something that you may or may not feel comfortable with right now. But if you wanted to talk a little bit more in depth about a particular subject, more so than just sharing a link to a news article or commenting on something that was relevant to your industry, you have the opportunity to publish a longer form commentary about something that you think your network would be interested in hearing about. The benefit of doing both of these things is that as an employer, when I see that you are creating updates or publishing something that's a little bit longer form, it makes me understand and believe that you truly are passionate about what it is that you are doing, what it is that you've spent obviously a number of years learning about and being involved with. And it also gives me the impression that you're active on LinkedIn, so that when I do reach out to you, when I do send you a message, you're going to respond quicker than maybe some of the other members that are not doing this type of thing. So being active on the network not only up-levels your professional reputation, but it also gives me more confidence that when I reach out to you, you're going to respond to me quickly. So the last thing here before I show you all the resources that you have are available is the opportunity to remember that, yes, while there's 7 million jobs on LinkedIn right now, a significant number of those obviously in the United States and Canada, but there's way more content on LinkedIn. Don't just think about LinkedIn as a place to go and find a job and apply, do that very traditional job board type of activity. You also want to make sure that you're engaging with the content there, because we know that that's how people are getting noticed more and more than just with the actual application. So you want to make sure that you're known for what you know. You want to make sure that your profile doesn't look like this, but it looks like this. You want it to have a nice, colorful, engaging type of presence on LinkedIn. So here's a number of different things that are resources and places that you can go. Now, I included some student information here, not because I'm imagining that there are a number of students on here, but a lot of the strategies and a lot of the different information that's on these two different sites that are geared specifically to post-secondary students is really applicable for people who are job seekers. Whether that means that you're 25 or 55 or anywhere in between, a lot of the similar strategies are there, especially for newcomers to Canada. There's a lot of really good information there that you can grab. So you want to start with help.linkedin.com and then you move your way down. And then the very last one is a really creative site that we've put together to help you get outside of maybe what you think you can do and imagine what it is that you should be doing. There's a lot of barriers that I think we put up in front of ourselves that are self-imagined. If we can imagine what it would be like to really be an astronaut, if that's what we want to be, then the only thing that's really stopping you, in my mind, is you. LinkedIn has the opportunity for you to be able to help form some of those dreams that you may want to accomplish. So take a look at that website there as a way to be able to imagine some of the things that you could do with a new career.
That's great. Thank you so much, Perry. This was truly invaluable, and I'm sure that many people will be listening to the recording. And I like the idea of how practical the advice is in terms of how to make your LinkedIn profile really work for you. So thank you very much for sharing your thoughts and your insight into that. We really appreciate that. And I just want to remind everyone, if you have any questions, to please post your questions in the Q&A window on the right-hand side of your screen. And now over to Karen, who is going to walk us through how do you use LinkedIn for a successful job search.
So hello, everyone. What I'm going to do is I'm going to be repeating a little bit of what Perry said, but the focus we're going to have is on helping people figure out how you can make your networks when you come to Canada. So a lot of it is what is involved in setting up your profile, but I'm going to focus a little bit more on how you use your profile for that particular purpose. So the first question is, why would you want to build a network at all? I mean, you all know that you're here, but there are particular benefits to it. If you build a large and strong network of professionals in your field, you'll find connections that can support your job search efforts using their own network. So people have connections, they have information, and they're going to be able to support what you need. Your network connections could help you with information about your industry. They could help you with referrals to others in their company and beyond. And they can refer you to jobs. And you might notice that I put the jobs at the bottom of the list. And the reason I did that is a lot of people think of LinkedIn as a place where you can only get jobs, or for networking, it's just for jobs. And that's not true. A lot of the real wealth of networks comes from information. It comes from collecting information from people, from meeting others. Jobs are often the product of that rather than the first thing. So if you go into this just with a focus on employment, you're going to lose out on opportunities. Start slow and move to employment. Networking isn't easy. It's hard work. So what I want you to do is think about how you're going to go about doing it. Be open to accepting requests. Connect widely. My philosophy generally is connect with as many people as you can. Don't leave anyone out. But the other part is to find the connections and grow your network actively. Don't wait for people to find you. Go out and seek them out yourself. Develop rapport with members. So once you've built your connections, go out there and connect with them both in person, even better, or online as well, so that you can develop the kind of connections you need to for people to want to do something for you. The other piece that we spoke about, that Perry already spoke about, is showing your expertise. So when and I'll speak about that in a moment, but anytime you have a chance to show people what you know, that's going to make a big difference in how people perceive you and how they network with you. So how do you go about doing it? So obviously, the first thing you want to do is think about your philosophy. There are many ways to build a network. Some people are very careful and selective, and they only choose the very few who they think are worth the connecting with. Others have a more big tent approach, which I would recommend. So my suggestion is go into this with a totally open mind. Connect with absolutely anyone you can. Don't underestimate who knows what. So that's what I was saying. Be open to accepting any requests that people send to you. To start building a good network, it's always a good idea to just consider when people come your way, take them on. There should be a good reason not to accept them. That should be your default. It should be, well, why not? You can always disconnect later if there's a problem. The other thing is to always start with the people you know. Some people go into networking very ambitiously, and they feel like they need to connect with people that are CEOs and HR managers. And actually, you might be making a mistake doing that. The people around you, the people you connected with, the people who are in your networks, those are the ones that often know others. So don't underestimate the value of those people, and don't underestimate what they know. Don't be a snob about it, because you're going to miss out if you do. And connect widely. So think about this. The more people you're connected to, the more easily you will be found on searches. LinkedIn searches and network searches in general always go within a certain number of degrees of connection. So obviously, the more people you're connected to, if you connect with lots of people who have 100+ connections, each one of those people are going to have an easier time finding you when they search. The larger the network, the more impressive you seem. So if someone looks at your profile and you have multiple connections, that's going to be more impressive than someone who only has a couple. And set out to find connections. For example, start with Google. Go on and search for professionals in your field in Canada. So put in a keyword like Canada or Toronto, if you know that's where you're going to be, or Edmonton, and put in the keyword of the field that you're coming into, and look for people in the field who do what you want to do. Read through websites of target companies that you want to identify with, and maybe there you'll find mentions of people that you would like to connect with. Use LinkedIn, the search bar to find people. LinkedIn's most recent version of the search bar is really excellent, and there's a lot of opportunities there to narrow down your search and focus it. It's an excellent tool for identifying people you want to target. And then look through your existing connections, contacts, right? And that's what networking is all about. It's not just who you know, but who they know, and see what you can find there. And then finally, and Perry mentioned that, and I'll talk about it again in a moment, the groups are an excellent source of connection. So join the groups and participate in them. Don't wait for other people to find you. I find a lot of people on LinkedIn are quite passive, at least the people we see. They set up a profile and they walk away. You need to take this to the next step and figure out who you want to target and actively seek them out. Think strategically about who you want to target. The people that you are going to be your best connections are the people who do the work you want to do. So I alluded to this earlier. I said don't only focus on managers. Think about the people who do the work you want to do. Those are the ones who know how to get into the field. They know where the openings are coming up. They're also the ones who are connected to managers, so they would give you much better access. So instead of targeting the managers, go for the people who are in your field. Those are going to be your best starting point. LinkedIn groups are an excellent source of connections. So joining and participating is a way to strategically build a network. And the reason I use the word strategic is, I mean, you're going to choose your groups carefully. And the groups have to be local to where you want to be, and they have to be specific to the field you want to go into. Search through them. There's a very good setup there for searching through the LinkedIn groups. And identify the local groups. Now, the other thing I mentioned here is looking at personal and professional interests. So sometimes joining a group that's in your personal area, let's say you're interested in human rights or you're interested in health causes. If you join groups that are involved with that, you'll often meet people who can introduce you to others. So it's a strategic and useful thing to do, not just on LinkedIn, but in life in general, to network beyond just your professional interests. Participate actively in the group. So again, don't just sign up, but actually participate. The best thing to do is to contribute to conversations and reach out to connect with people who you'd like to add to your network. Now, important to remember that it is not just good enough to add your connections. You want to make sure that people that you interact with them. Many people have hundreds or more contacts, and most of them don't recognize or will never meet the people that they're connected with. Unless they get to know you better, people are not going to want to offer you help. So your job here is to set out to actually get to know the individuals you connect with better. Personalize your requests. That's one way to do it. So instead of just sending an invitation without saying anything, use the opportunity LinkedIn provides you to customize your invitation. So when you connect, take an opportunity to send a brief introductory note. LinkedIn allows about 300 characters, which is about 4 to 5 sentences, and that allows you just to quickly tell them who you are and that you want to connect with them. Choose the words that you use carefully. Your invitation message is a chance for you to state your intentions briefly and thank them in advance for connecting with you. Keep in mind language. Obviously, you want to make sure your grammar's right and it's as accurate as you can be, because that's obviously part of first impressions. So here's an example of an introductory note. So you can use people's first names, and you can say, I am an architect, for example, who specializes in whatever your specialty area, and just say, I'm working on building my Canadian professional network, and would be grateful if you agree to join my connections. So don't jump into asking them for anything yet. The first step is simply to build a connection. And then once they connect, to say thank you. After they accept your request, just a little note saying thank you so much for agreeing to connect with me is a great next step. Then your job is to stay in touch. So sometimes that means commenting briefly on contacts updates. asking thoughtful, simple questions about their job. So go into a private message and ask someone something like, so can you tell me a little bit about where the jobs are posted in your field? Or what opportunities does this job provide for you to do ABC, whatever you're interested in? But simple questions, and then thank them when they reply. So this is a slow, careful process. It's not one of jumping down people's messaging as soon as they've connected. I often get people asking me immediately for employment as soon as they connect, which isn't very effective in building a network. So don't overwhelm them with too much chatter or questions at the beginning. And sometimes you can tell as you go along with people that if they're more forthcoming, you can be a little bit more outgoing yourself. So try and measure your reaction to people based on how they respond to you. Show your expertise. So this goes back to what Perry spoke about, really. So you have an opportunity to share a photo and update an article as you would on other sites. Do that. Use it as an opportunity to enhance your image as an expert in your field. Share interesting information, thoughts, updates with your connections. You also want to think about writing. So as Perry mentioned, but I think you have to be careful here because you must make sure that you're writing something that's interesting to others. So it's not just an opportunity for you to talk about something that isn't of interest or isn't of use and express your feelings. It's much more about something that people can look at and actually learn something. Sometimes they can learn from your feelings, but sometimes it's expertise in your field or insights that you've gained. These posts do not have to be long and they do not have to be complex. They can be simple and clear. And I think going back to what Perry said about enthusiasm and passion, this is an opportunity for you to show your passion. The balance here is this balance between expertise and passion. You want to show how much you know in the field and what an expert you are and how enjoyable you find the field to be. So that's the kind of person they get to want to hire. Here's a quote from Gary Meisner, who says, first you have to be visible in a community. Meisner, by the way, is a networking expert. He says you have to get out there and connect with people. It's not called net sitting or net eating. It's called networking. You have to work at it.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Karen. I think it was a great combination of how to create a successful LinkedIn profile and then how to work it for your networking, for your job search. So this brings me to the first question that I'd like to address at Perry, and maybe you could share some perspective from the employer side. What do employers do on LinkedIn, and what advice could you give our listeners today of this webinar on how they can leverage their LinkedIn profile in terms of what employers are looking for?
So I'll start by saying what employers are generally not doing on LinkedIn, and that is trying to sell something or promote their product or service. You know, Twitter or Facebook or Snapchat, those are generally places where companies are going to try and sell you something, and there's nothing wrong with that. On LinkedIn, what they are trying to promote is their brand from an employment perspective. So let's use an example of Coke. Everyone, for the most part, I would imagine, knows Coke. They have a very prominent brand around the world. Everyone knows what Coke is. It's a beverage. You can have your own opinion as to whether or not Coke is good or not good, but everyone knows what that beverage is. You may have a negative opinion on that particular brand because it's not healthy or it's not something that you enjoy. That's fine. On LinkedIn, what Coke is going to try and do, however, is they are going to try and explain to you why working at Coke is one of the best places that you could go in your career. They are going to try and promote themselves as a place of employment that is attractive to the types of people that they are trying to promote. So one of the things that you're going to want to do if you have a meeting or an interview or any type of engagement with a particular organization is use LinkedIn to not only understand what that particular message is to the broader professional world of what it's like to work there, but to understand the types of individuals that they like to hire. Try and understand what their culture is like. Every company tries to have their own type of culture, and so it's really important for you when you go into an interview, that you try and not only be yourself, but also be somebody who at least understands and appreciates the culture of that particular organization. And one of the ways in which you can do that is by looking at the company's presence on LinkedIn and also looking at the employees' profiles on LinkedIn. If you were to come and interview at LinkedIn, you'd be able to see a very coordinated effort across a lot of the LinkedIn employees' profiles of what it's like to work at LinkedIn, some of the initiatives that we do at LinkedIn that aren't just focused, again, on our jobs, but are also focused on some of the things that we do in the community. My news feed right now is filled with people, men at LinkedIn, celebrating the important women in their lives. It's a really, great example of how a coordinated effort at a company can allow people who are visiting our profiles to understand that we truly value a woman's contribution in the workplace. And so that would be something really relevant to be able to talk about in a meeting with a LinkedIn employee if you were to meet with them over the course of the next couple of weeks. So you want to be really, really engaged with not only your own profile, but the profiles of the companies that you're meeting with, as well as that company's profile itself. There's a lot of information to be learned about those particular organizations that you can get for free on LinkedIn just by doing a little bit of research.
Thank you very much. So we, as we mentioned, it's about working. It's about being active on LinkedIn. And when we ask many of our participants, many people say that they have a good LinkedIn profile, but they're actually not doing much about it. One of the questions that we had, and one of the pieces of advice that were given here, try to seek people who do the work that you potentially want to be doing as well. But how acceptable is it to actually target CEOs and the movers and shakers in the industry, and how receptive are they going to be to this type of requests?
That's a great question. I think we all are sort of drawn to just trying to find the most quote-unquote important person at a company and asking them for their advice on what it's like to work there. It's probably not the greatest strategy, though, because no offense to the CEOs of the world, but for the most part, they haven't done the role of an individual contributor in a very long time, nor do they probably have a good idea of what their employees are doing. That may sound funny, but they're going to be focused on the bigger picture stuff, the strategy, the overall vision of the organization, where that organization is going. So you're probably better off, and also remember they probably have the busiest calendar of anybody at that organization. So you're probably better off of engaging sort of that middle management, and also to your point earlier, the actual employees who are doing the job are going to be people who you're really going to want to engage with. They have a vested interest in bringing people on board to their organization that can help them do their job, because for the most part, if they refer you into the company and you were hired, you're going to get a referral bonus. So it's really, I think, a better use of your time to target the managers of the groups that you want to work for, or the people who are actually in those groups, and learn from them. And there's going to be an opportunity for you to meet the occasional CEO down the road, but for the most part, it's probably not a good use of your time.
Thank you. And Karen, what do you do if people don't respond?
If they don't respond, move on. I really think that, there's not one person there who's going to be the only one in a position to help. I think part of the problem is people are impatient and that they want things quickly. And the slower you move, the more effective you are. Like anything else in life, really. So start slow and take a step down. Go to a person one below the level of the person you're targeting. And generally, stay away from HR people, because HR people are the busiest, and they are the ones who know the least about what's happening on the ground level. So just take a step down or a step sideways and keep going.
Great. And another question for you, Karen. One of the questions that came in today, in terms of volunteer experience, can we include the experience in our country of origin, the country that our newcomers are coming from?
Not only can you, but you should. So I want to encourage people to, the tone of your profile generally needs to be one of being proud of the skills you've got, what experience you bring in. This has been a shift in our field in the last number of years. We used to kind of encourage people to not focus on where they come from, to focus into the future. You still want to do that, but I think there's a certain amount of pride that's going to be infectious if you do that. So talk about your volunteer experience, you explain it. If there are things you are doing that people might not understand, then explain what the organization is like and what you did there. And I want to emphasize also the value of coming to Canada and seeking volunteer experience here, so that it's not just the thing of bringing experience with you, but kind of jumping into society with both feet here as well.
And if I might just remind our listeners that we had a webinar on the importance of volunteering for networking, so you can refer to the previous webinars. There's a lot of valuable information there as well. Let's move to the next question. People who are planning their immigration to Canada and their move to Canada would like to know whether a statement like pursuing opportunities in Canada in the header of or the summary, would it make sense? Would it be appealing to the local employers, or would it actually kind of turn them off? Gary, what do you think?
I'm not sure that there is one answer here, because the unfortunate reality is that you don't always know who's reading your profile and what their opinions are or what their expectations are. So I think for me, this is a cliche, but for me, honesty is the best policy. It's probably better for you to say that you are seeking opportunities in Canada. This is where I'm going to be. This is when I'm going to be there. But also understand that for the most part, it's going to be difficult, I think, to I'm happy to be stand corrected here, or to be corrected on this, but I would imagine it's probably difficult to land a full-time employment opportunity before you actually get to Canada. But certainly doing the advanced work of networking, getting to know the industry, setting up some meetings for when you are here is something that you could realistically do in advance and have people here waiting and willing to meet with you once you arrive. So using that in your headline as an opportunity to open up that door to conversation is certainly something I would encourage.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Karen, what's your perspective?
Well, I think that I do agree. I agree with Carrie. I think that what you want to do with your profile is make sure that you absolutely answer the questions that might be going through the employer's mind. So if they see you're in India and now you're networking with them in Canada, you would do better to actually mention, I wouldn't necessarily say in the header, but in the summary, that you are you're working towards arriving in Canada in this and that time of the year or month, so that people know that this is a very deliberate effort. Yeah, honesty is always your best approach.
And we have another question about the multimedia pair, is something that you mentioned. People are asking, are there any specific locations, any specific sources to look for that type of information to enhance their profile on LinkedIn?
I think you would have that yourself. Certainly, if it's video, YouTube is the platform that we work best with. I know we've added support for some other Vimeo, I believe we added support for, but YouTube tends to be the best one. If you've been interviewed, that's usually the most common use for YouTube, or you actually put together a video if you're in the creative field and you either make movies or commercials or marketing materials. Upload those videos to YouTube, and then you can link them from there. And then certainly the other multimedia things, simple things like just JPEGs, that's one thing that's relatively easy to do. But anything beyond that, if you can put that into a PowerPoint presentation or SlideShare or a PDF, Adobe Acrobat, that was probably your best bet for leveraging the multimedia components.
And someone was asking, how many of those would you recommend? Is there a recommended amount? Yeah,
again, it depends on the industry, right, how important that is. If you're a graphic designer, more is probably better, right, because that's really what your skill set is. If you are in, I've been interviewed before, I would maybe put up 1 or 2 interviews as opposed to, every single time I've been interviewed, because it just gets repetitive, and really the only person who really cares about that a lot is my mom. So I think it is a fine line as to how much you quote unquote brag about or be proud of what it is that you do versus coming across as maybe a little bit arrogant. So you do want to be cautious of that. Again, I would try and put yourself in the position of the person who's viewing the profile. Look at your profile as though it was you or them, and make a best guess.
Great. Thank you very much for that. And a question for Karen. So when you look for people on LinkedIn, what is more important for you to build your network when you are targeting people? Is it the person's title or their organization or the business, the company they're working for?
I would think that it's a bit of everything. I would say to you that you do want to look at people, individuals. Job titles are useful. You know, the point of the search function on LinkedIn, which is really fantastic, is you will be able to find all of those things. So go in and be creative. Search for job titles, see who comes up. Search for companies and see who comes up. I like to target companies because companies is where networks exist. So do both. You know, go as broadly as you can in terms of your search.
And a question to both of you. We spoke a lot about the do's, what to do and how to enhance your network through LinkedIn. What are the don'ts? What are the absolute no-nos for job seekers or potential newcomers to Canada to do on LinkedIn?
I would say a couple of things. Unless you're actually in the religious field or the political field, probably best not to comment or create material in those two areas. I'm not sure what the sort of other cultures, sort of how they view that, but certainly here in North America, I would suggest it's not a best practice. Again, of course, unless you are in politics or religion, which is completely legitimate as a profession, which you may very well be in, otherwise it's probably best for you to avoid it. There's a lot of noise, especially south of the border at the moment here in North America, so it's probably best to avoid that. And then certainly I think somebody who just doesn't understand the culture or the nuances or the importance of being concise with the things that you say on your profile. If your profile is very wordy or very lengthy or just not sort of in line with some of the cultural norms, it can be damaging to your reputation here in North America. So you want to be conscious of what other profiles of individuals in your field look like and sound like, and try and leverage some of those as examples that you can then borrow from yourself. That's probably one of the best things to do when you're determining what that opportunity is that you want to connect yourself with, is to just go on LinkedIn and look for other people who do what you do, and don't do anything with their profile other than just consume it and try and leverage the things that you're comfortable with onto your own profile.
Thank you. And Karen, from your experience, what are some of the common mistakes that people make on LinkedIn?
Well, I think that it sounds obvious, but it needs to be said. Watch your language, watch your grammar, make sure that your spelling is good, make sure that you are, a lot of people just seem to, the looks of their profile is that they've just kind of slapped it together, they haven't written in full sentences, they haven't put in detail where there was an opportunity to detail. So the more detail, the more specific you are, and the more accurate and careful you are, even in writing, using capitalization in your sentences. Just show, the more effort that you put in, the more you're going to show people that you're taking this seriously. So it amazes me that people don't do as much of that. And just to go back to something Perry mentioned much earlier, which is the photo. Don't leave your photo out. If you do, my general sense is if I see something that's not an actual photo of an actual person and someone's trying to connect with me, I will not connect with them. So just make sure that your picture's there and that you look like a real person, not a logo or a puppy or a flower.
Thank you. And another question, very practical. When is it okay to ask someone for assistance to get your job? If you know there is an opening in the company that are working and you have connected with them.
Such a good question. I just want to quickly answer that, because we had in our last workshop one of our job developers, and she and I had a disagreement in front of everyone. My sense of it was to go more slowly and to build up a rapport before you ask. Her reaction was, if you see a job, connect with the person. You know, if the poster of the job is identified, connect with them and ask them straight away. I think the conclusion we reached is that you have to be specific about the sector you're in. So, for example, some sectors are more conservative, like banking. Some are more open, and in social media, for example, people are a lot more open. So depending on your personality, depending on the sector, do what feels comfortable, but just resist. It's hard to tell when you're stepping into a new culture. Resist the urge to jump too fast and push. So wait a little bit, build a rapport, but don't wait too long. So it's not a good answer, I know, but it's as good as we can get in terms of guessing how people are going to respond to you.
Thank you, Karen. And an interesting question for Perry here. How much would you say great a LinkedIn profile would increase our chances of being hired as newcomers?
We only knew that.
Yeah, unfortunately, you're looking for a scientific answer to a question that there is no science behind networking other than what we know are best practices. So I know that that is frustrating because everything that we've talked about here is best practice, but you can encounter an employer tomorrow who doesn't agree with this and does things their own way. But we know that the majority of the industry, the majority of the hiring managers, the majority of the employers out there in this country respond in a positive way to the things that we talked about, both in terms of networking best practices and your own profile best practices. I would say, though, that when you look at the data, with 15 million members approximately in Canada, 500 million members approximately in the world, if you're not on LinkedIn, your competition sure is. There's only 35 million members, 35 million Canadians, right? So you figure there's probably 18 to 20 million employable people in Canada at a max. And if 15 million of those are already on LinkedIn, there's a lot of people there that are already there that are your competition. So if you're not there now, you should be. And that's as strong as a sales pitch I'll give you. But for me, the data tells me that I need to be where the majority of the people are.
Great. Any final comments from our panelists today, Karen?
From me, just to say that those of you listening to this are very lucky to have an opportunity to access all the resources that are provided. So I want to urge you to keep using them. There's this balance between being an independent job seeker and gathering your own information, but also accessing services that are available, both from a distance and also when you come in. So go out and do it, and don't stop, and don't give up. Those sound kind of obvious, but it's easy to get frustrated and overwhelmed when you arrive in Canada, and I know that because I've done the same. Just do what you need to do, tap into the expertise that's available, and LinkedIn is such a fabulous resource to help you make that transition. Do it, use it, and maximize it.
Eric?
Both of my parents came to Canada. I'm a first-generation Canadian, I guess. So I grew up in a household where both my parents were not from this country. And I know that it's not easy, but there are a lot of things that you can do, both, like you said, from afar and while you're here, to help increase the chances of you getting to a place where you want to be from an employment perspective. As a former recruiter, one of the biggest areas of frustration beyond just finding that first job that I heard from people was, my first job isn't the job that I want. And that is something that is an unfortunate reality, but is also something that if you understand that that is okay, that your first job in Canada is so important, that once you have that, it then opens up so many other doors where you can leverage your previous experience from wherever you happen to have come from. So your first job in Canada may not necessarily be what you envisioned it to be, but I have many, many examples and worked with many, many people that their second, third, fourth job, it now then becomes in the industry that they want to become, and they can leverage their previous experience. So take advantage of all the services and the best practices that we talked about, but also understand that it is a journey and it is not something that is going to happen quickly.
Yeah. Thank you very much. And I think on this very optimistic note, we will conclude our discussion today. I'd like to once again thank Karen and Perry for the invaluable insight on using LinkedIn in your job search. Thank you very much for listening.